the left does want a revolution. And we're about to watch a video where Glenn Beck dedicates an entire episode to the left's takeover by cultural Marxists. That may sound extreme, but it's actually 110% correct. The problem is most people in this country don't really understand the ideology of the left. It's really not the Democrat Party anymore. It's been taken over by something quite different, whether it's critical theory, DEI, it's cultural Marxism. You can do a very simple Google search and look up critical theory and where it came from. You'll find names like Adorno, Horkheimer, Mancuso. They're all Marxists. Critical theory was created by them and other Marxists in the late 1930s. Won't take you long to do the research if you're willing to make the effort to do the actual research. Be that as it may, that's exactly what the left is doing. And we're going to watch this video by Glenn Beck because he goes into more detail than I've seen anybody else to date go into with regards to the left's takeover by cultural Marxists. Here you go.
Let me start here before I get into what I think is coming, and this is a good indication of it. Last night at the Israeli embassy, two staff members, they're called diplomats because they were probably on a diplomatic passport. They worked at the embassy, but these are just two young kids, in their 20s. Yaron Lichinsky and Sarah Milgram. They were walking out of an event that happened to be at the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., and a 30-year-old guy, we now know is Elias Rodriguez. He's from Chicago. He decided that he was going to kill himself some Jews. And so he stood in waiting with a gun, and he gunned these two kids down in cold blood. They caught him. They confiscated the gun. If we had the death penalty, I hope he would get the death penalty, but we don't do that anymore. And he's going to be tried most likely in Washington, D.C., so God only knows what happens to him. But this is a couple that he had just this week, unbeknownst to her, gone out and bought a engagement ring here in America, was going to bring it back home in his pocket to Israel. And when they got back to Israel next week, he was going to propose. Their whole life, any children they would have had, gone. Now, let me tell you who this guy is. We now know that this guy was part of a Marxist pro-Hamas organization. It's Marxist communist. These are the people our schools are churning out.
I'm just going to interrupt him briefly there because I know some people are probably thinking, well, I've never heard this before. And you're right. He is completely accurate with regards to cultural Marxism and the takeover of the left and the influence on the left of the country. He's not the only one who's mentioned it, and we need to talk about it some more. Two other names we're going to watch short clips from, names you'll recognize. One is Dr. Phil and one is Greg Gutfeld. They both had the courage to actually mention cultural Marxism and the left, i.e. the former Democrat Party. But first, we're going to watch a very brief clip from Dr. Phil, when he talks about DEI and equity, equality of outcome. That's all Marxist ideology. He is completely correct. Here you go with the video.
Okay, so that means you're trying to create equality of outcome. Mm-hmm. That's what I hear you saying about playing God. Yeah. How do you create equality of outcome when people aren't the same? You're right. Some people are shorter. Some people are taller looking over that fence. They can't both play in the NBA.
Right.
You can't create equality of outcome. What gives a DEI program the right to come in and try and alter the nature of things to create equality of outcome? That's been tried. That didn't work. That was called Marxism.
And next, there's a short clip from Greg Gutfeld where he has the courage to actually take the time to publicly talk about the left's influence via cultural Marxism. Here you go.
The equity, the DEI,
I don't think you can underestimate how wokeness, which is fueled by identity politics, essentially cultural Marxism, infected the party and ate it out, devoured it from the inside.
And now let's get back to the video with Glenn Beck and listen to more of what he has to say.
This is ends justify the means. These are the same people that are, the same people that are now helping these judges and pushing these judges and protesting in the streets and causing all kinds of havoc because they think that they should stand up for the rights of murderers and everybody else to stay here in our country. Then you have people like the governor of Minnesota saying that ICE is Trump's modern day Gestapo. Everything is being ratcheted up. Everything is, you have Fang Fang's boyfriend saying that they've arrested MacGyver, a congresswoman who was assaulting a police officer, trying to storm the gates of a secure facility for ICE. All she had to do if she wanted oversight was call them and they would have let her in. But instead, a mayor who wants to be governor of New Jersey, they came with a bunch of protesters. They protested around the gate. Well, as soon as they opened the gate to let a bus in, the protesters, this congresswoman and the mayor, they all surged at the gate. ICE did their best to stop them. They were assaulted, yada, yada, yada. And now, Nancy Mace just introduced a bill in Congress that said she should be removed from Congress. I think she should. I don't think Congress will do it. That's how sad things are. She should be removed from Congress. She's assaulting police officers. DOJ is now going to prosecute her after the investigation for that. Why? Last night on TV, I asked the question, why would the Democrats be going this way? Why would they be standing up for murderers? Why would they be standing up for Hamas? Why would they be ratcheting up? It's not the way to win an election. You're not going to win on that. America's not going to embrace that. I believe that may not be the plan. Revolution and direct action stuff, that's what they're trained to do. It's the highest calling of the left. And this isn't about politics. This is about a Marxist worldview that has been baked into the minds of several generations of Americans through our university classrooms now. I could give you the history of it, but it starts with John Dewey, and then it goes to a guy named Paulo, I think his name is Freire. And Freire, he wrote a book called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And that is the sacred text for the left and the educational revolution. You want to know what happened to our education? Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Read it. He didn't see schools as a place for learning math or history. He saw them as battlegrounds for social action. All across the U.S., his critical pedagogy is still the dominant theory in teacher education programs today. So they are churning out radicals. And his big idea was, see if this sounds familiar, the world is divided into oppressors and the oppressed. So the classroom is where you train students to see everything through that lens. You're either the oppressor or the oppressed. This is critical race theory, gender ideology, DEI, every other oppressed versus oppressor framework that's taken over our corporations and our campuses comes from this.
Glenn Beck is completely correct. That book is the source of the cultural Marxist influence on education in this country, and it's been going on for decades now. If you want to understand where cultural Marxism, critical theory, DEI, where all that came from, then you definitely need to get the book that's on the screen right now and read it. Relatively short, 108 pages, 115 footnotes or references, 108 pages. So on average, more than one of these footnotes per page. It's incredibly fact-based. And it will explain to you how cultural Marxism came to the U.S., who were the players that brought this to the U.S. So we're talking about Horkheimer, Adorno, Mancuso. Those were the Marxists that created this cultural Marxist influence in this country. Coincidentally, they came to this country from overseas, Germany of all places, in the mid-1930s, and they were hosted by, get this, none other than the president of Columbia University in New York City. Imagine that. The same university that has all this Hamas unrest, intimidating, threatening, and physically harming occasionally Jewish students. Same group of people, same entity. Columbia University is what hosted these guys that created the cultural Marxist influence that we've been dealing with for decades. Highly recommend it. Get the book. You can read it in one sitting, and then you'll be completely up to speed on where all this stuff from the left is coming from. Like I said, critical theory, DEI. Critical theory isn't a theory at all. It's just a mandate to criticize via, as Glenn Beck said, the creation of oppressor and oppressed. You want to know where it comes from? Get the book. Read it. You can thank me later. But for now, let's get back to Glenn Beck. Here you go.
The wake of the Hamas attack in Israel, October 7th, 23. Jonathan Haidt, one of the brilliant minds of our day, he wrote an article called Why Anti-Semitism Sprouted So Quickly on Campus. He says the students have learned now a new morality. Let me read this to you. To view everyone as either an oppressor or a victim, students were taught to use identity as the primary lens through which everything is to be understood. Not in their coursework, but in their personal and political lives. When students are taught to use a single lens for everything, their education is harming them rather than improving their ability to think critically. This is the new morality. This is what has driven our universities off a cliff, and it's about to run our country off a cliff if more people don't wake up. Because this is what fuels the direct action in the streets. Now, I said last hour, and I said last night on TV, that I don't know if it's going to be this summer, but we are headed for real, BLM riots all across America on multiple fronts. It's coming. It's just coming. And it's coming from, we've seen the political violence from the left. No matter what the mainstream media wants to tell you, oh, no, that's, we're worried about the white man and the extremists. Well, you know what? I'm worried about everybody right now, quite honestly. But one side really has a track record, and I don't have to go back in the time machine to see it. Let me just give you a few. This is just off the top, of our heads as we sat around this morning. Ready? Baseball field attack on Republican congressman in 2017 by a Bernie Sanders supporter that almost killed Representative Steve Scalise. He was out to kill all of the Republicans on the baseball diamond, and we now know that our DOJ covered it up because who was in charge? 2020 BLM riots, which caused at least a dozen deaths and an all-time U.S. record of $2 billion in damages. The 2020 Antifa riots in Portland, where the Department of Homeland Security spent $12 million just to protect the federal buildings during weeks-long battle with rioters. At one point, the rioters barricaded federal offices inside a courthouse and tried to set the building on fire. How about the 96 different crisis pregnancy centers that were attacked since the Dobbs decision was overturned? Or overturned Roe versus Wade, or the hundreds of Catholic churches that have been vandalized with pro-abortion messages, or the man who was arrested with weapons, all kinds of stuff, outside Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's house, who claimed he was there to assassinate Kavanaugh because of the Dobbs decision. Then there was the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, last year. The alleged killer held left-wing views, and now the left has lionized him. He's a hero of the left. You don't put that man up as a hero for your movement. You don't make him a hero unless you agree with violence. Unless you believe, no matter what, ends justify the means. He's now a folk hero. How about the burning of the Tesla dealerships and the cars? Last month, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's official residence was firebombed. The suspect allegedly set the governor's mansion on fire because of what? Because Shapiro, who is Jewish, what he wants to do to the Palestinian people. Okay, wait a minute. So shooting last night, the fire there. Then, of course, there was the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life last year. Somehow we still don't know the details about the assassin's political views, but seems pretty unlikely that he was a conservative. The pattern is very clear, and what's disturbing about this is It's getting worse after the election. Okay? When these people talk about democracy, what they mean is communist-style people's revolution. And I want to make sure you understand this. I'm not talking about the average Democrat that is your neighbor. I don't believe they believe this stuff. I think they've been duped into believing that, through the hatred of Donald Trump, and they may have legitimate reasons for not liking Donald Trump, okay? I'm not going to argue with that. You might have legitimate reasons for not liking him. But they have been so indoctrinated by the mainstream media. They've only been given half of the story, and the half that they're giving a lot of times is out and out lies. I mean, let's talk about the Biden stuff, okay? And you've been indoctrinated to hate Donald Trump, which stops you from looking at what your side is actually doing and the coordination of it. And if you think that it's not coordination, well, let me just tell you about the coalition of Democratic governors called Governors Safeguarding Democracy. It is a group that is led by J.B. Pritzker, who is the Illinois governor, and Colorado's governor, Jared Polis. This is a coordinated effort to defy President Trump's immigration policies and to get some heavy hitters calling the shots. One day after Trump's second inauguration, the group held a Zoom meeting led by none other than Norm Eisen. Who is that? He's the former White House ethics czar, so funny, and a special counsel for Trump's first impeachment trial. He is also one of the ringleaders of the current lawsuit campaign. He's laid this whole thing out. Now, their strategy is laid out in a book called Governors Safeguarding Democracy, Firewall for Freedom. Now, it was obtained through FOIA by the Daily Signal. Why isn't nobody talking? Why isn't anybody saying, thank you, Daily Signal? Why isn't anybody talking about this? Well, we know, because the mainstream media is never going to talk about this. The plan includes model executive orders for governors to use in blocking National Guard deployments if they don't like them, and refuse state resources for federal immigration enforcement. One draft order says that states shall provide no time, money, or facilities for National Guard units deployed without the governor's approval. Another directs state agencies to withhold information if they suspect it's being used for immigration actions. So they are plotting government. And what exactly are they preparing to obstruct? What National Guard deployments? What are you talking about? Well, Governor Pritzker said something in a speech that I think ties into this directly. Is it just that they're going to use legal action? No. Now, remember, Pritzker is one of the guys leading this with Norm Eisen and everybody else. And I want you to listen to what he's saying. He's not talking about the National Guard, and he's not talking about lawyers here. Listen to what he said just a couple of weeks ago.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption. But I am now.
These people cannot know a moment of peace. That is a governor of one of our largest states.
I'll interrupt Mr. Glenn Beck one more time. What he's saying about this organized opposition to the Trump administration, or from a greater perspective, Republicans, conservatives, of course, is correct. And Letitia James is part of this too. She's part of this consortium of state attorney generals that are working with district court judges to literally obstruct the administration's policy. And we hear about, oh, well, they have to do it because of constitutional reasons or violating due process, which is absolutely a total crock of malarkey. I've done several videos referencing two people in particular, both incredible constitutional attorneys. One is Mark Levin, and the other one is Alan Dershowitz. This whole due process argument is bunk. These people, I'm talking about these violent criminal illegal aliens, they've been given due process. Some of them have been through immigration courts more than once, and the courts have said, get them out of the country, and still, it's not enough. Oh, you sent them to the wrong country. Or these people said they wouldn't feel safe if they were sent. Who gives a damn about whether these people feel safe or not? Okay, and that's something people need to come to grips with. I get it. We're a country of law. It's great. They got the due process. Get out of the country. Why in heaven's creation do we care? Drop them off on an island somewhere. They don't have the right to dictate to us and stay in this country longer as we feed them, house them, everything we do for them. The violent criminal, murderers, rapists, human trafficking. I mean, seriously. But nonetheless, it's an organized effort by the Democrats, which really aren't Democrats. It's cultural Marxism. They don't like our country at all. They don't like a constitutional republic. They don't like capitalism. They don't like any of it. They want to get rid of it. It is absolutely an organized effort. You all need to understand that what Glenn Beck is saying is completely correct. Back to Mr. Glenn Beck. Here we go.
This is what happens when the system churns out activists instead of thinkers. Violence is excused as resistance. When governors weaponize their authority to defy the will of the American people. Trump won in a clear 2024 mandate. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows Trump was elected for two things. The economy and immigration. And I don't think in that order. But he won. And the left is obsessed with their oppressor-oppressed worldview. They see only one path, and that is fight, disrupt, and resist. We're not talking about just policy disagreements. This is a coordinated effort to destabilize America, rooted in decades of Marxist indoctrination. That's what's happening in America. That's what's coming.
Truly hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know down in the comment section below what you think as far as this cultural Marxist influence. And I will tell you, doing videos is one thing. The intent is to create a conversation. Sometimes I say that and I regret it. I get absolutely bombarded by people very far on the left. And sometimes it's difficult to have a respectful conversation with people who are, quite frankly, name calling and threatening and saying all sorts of stuff in the comment section. Nonetheless, that's how we communicate. It goes beyond that, though. Part of it's exchanging ideas and education. In this video, there are actually two books that I highly recommend. I'm talking to everybody. And as I say at the end, God bless, love you all. I do, everybody. So I'm talking to Democrats, Independents, Republicans. I'm talking to Americans. And I'm trying to encourage people who are understanding that they're conservative or starting to lean conservative or Democrat and just confused. They go, what in the heck happened to my party? Where did it go? It left me. I'm not leaving it. It left me. If you're in that category and you want to understand things more clearly that are happening around you, if you have kids, you're going to school and the school programs absolutely suck. They are not educating, reading, writing, arithmetic. They're not doing that anymore. They're programming your kids. You want to understand where it came from? Read the books. It will make so much more sense, and you'll always win every argument, debate you have with whomever. Or even if you're watching the news and you see it come up, you're like, oh, that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense because boom, 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 you'll be able to spell it out. If you have a family member, as in my case, who's very far on the left end of the spectrum, I simply ask them, how long have you been a Marxist? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, you do love critical theory. Yep. And you love DEI and equalities of outcome. Yep. I think that's the right thing. Great. How long have you been a Marxist? What are you talking about? Man, you're everything you're talking about, critical theory, DEI, oppressor and oppressed, all of that stuff is Marxism. Yeah, but I think we need to try things a different way, they say to me. It's like, no, man, Marxism doesn't do things in half measures. Okay, Marxism is about revolution, and they don't do it halfway. Cuba, Russia, China. Marxists have murdered more of their own people than everybody killed during all of World War II. Okay? Marxists don't do things halfway. So if you really want to effectively engage in conversation and shut this stuff down, you need to read. And both those books are a fantastic place to start. Highly recommend them. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Look forward to comments down below. If you did enjoy it, learn something from it, give it a thumbs up. Want to see more like it, subscribe. And as always, until next time, God bless. Love you all. And I do mean everybody.